Greetings. Sinfonia Toronto's next concert is on December 10 at Jane Mallett Theatre at 8 p.m. This will be a hybrid concert. It will be live streamed and will remain online as a virtual concert for 4 more weeks until January 9. And we are calling this concert Beethoven at 251. So that's the title of the concert. Last year, December 2020, was Beethoven's 250th. So we did have a live stream because many in-person performances around the world were canceled. And we played at that concert his Landler dances as well as his Seventh Symphony in a new string orchestra version. This year, we thought that Beethoven didn't get a fair birthday, so we are celebrating his 251st with his 8th symphony. And the concert also includes Chopin's first piano concerto to be played by Dmitri LEVKOVICH, and also two movements from Samuel Coleridge-Taylor's Fantasiestücke. So the concert actually begins with Chopin's first piano concerto. We call it the first piano concerto, but actually it's the second concerto. The F minor concerto is really the first piano concerto. The E minor concerto was published first. That's why we call it the first piano concerto. We'll play this work in a string orchestra version, and this version was done during 19th century by a composer by the name of Richard Hofmann, and it works quite well with the strings. And the this piano concerto is unusual in the sense that it begins with quite a substantial orchestral introduction, almost 4 minutes long orchestral introduction. And when the piano comes in, of course, magical writing for piano that Chopin was famous for. Chopin belongs to this category of composers that wrote music because they were virtuosi and they needed new works. They needed to create brilliant new works to be able to showcase their amazing virtuosity. Paganini for the violin, Liszt for the piano, Chopin, of course, for the piano. And the first concerto was criticized a bit by musicologists at the time simply because of not being adventurous enough in terms of harmonies and in terms of any kind of renovation the way earlier composers Mozart, Beethoven brought to the piano concerto form new ideas. Um, However, Chopin's concerto, the first piano concerto, is simply magical, full of romantic melodies, and the interaction between the piano and orchestra is minimal in the sense that they don't really communicate with each other. Simply that orchestral role is simply is a background accompaniment. But the tuttis are interesting, where Chopin has given himself a break by putting some tutti orchestral sections where he can relax a bit, but orchestra also can play some of the main ideas, main tunes that piano part has. The second half of the concert begins with a work by Samuel Coleridge-Taylor. This composer was born in London in late 19th century and lived halfway through the 20th century as well. And he studied in London and showed tremendous talent, and he studied with very good composition teachers. And the Fantasiestücke is a collection of five works for a string quartet. And what I have done is chosen two movements, the prelude and the dance, and added a double bass part. So we will play those as a string orchestra piece. Samuel Coleridge-Taylor also was a fine conductor. He came to United States and he actually conduct New York Philharmonic on a tour, and musicians were tremendously impressed by his conducting skills and by his musical skills as well, because he also conducted some of his own compositions with the New York Philharmonic. And they nicknamed him as the African Mahler. And the piece by Samuel Coleridge-Taylor, titled Fantasiestücke, is his Opus 5. So it's an earlier work, but you will see the tremendous talent, compositional talent, in these very short two selections that we'll be playing. We will follow this with Beethoven's Eighth Symphony. So the Eighth Symphony F Major is another symphony where Beethoven tries new tricks. It was written about the same time as the Seventh Symphony was written. He worked on two masterpieces at the same time, and there are no parallels. Seventh Symphony is a completely different mood, whereas Eighth Symphony is full of ideas that are on the lighter side of things. If for one thing, the first movement begins with no introduction, not a slow introduction, not even a chord, a couple of chords to set the tone. It immediately begins as if you open the window and look outside early in the morning. Already everything is happening, and that's the mood of the first movement. The moment it starts right away with brilliant ideas. The second movement is a bit similar in the sense to the second movement of the Seventh Symphony, which he was working at the same time. It is not a slow movement per se. It is a allegretto scherzando, and often we hear reference that it was a tribute to his friend Meisel, the inventor of the modern metronome. That is actually not true. Yes, Beethoven was friends with Meisel, but the second movement of the Eighth Symphony is not a dedication to Meisel himself. It's simply because we know this now that Meisel's metronome came much later than the publication of the Eighth Symphony. So he couldn't have written it to make it sound like a metronome. There are steady 16 notes going on in the accompaniment, so there is this tick-tock idea of the metronome, but I don't think that there is a correlation there. The third movement is a brilliant minuet. Also, it's a bit unlike Beethoven, because usually Beethoven's third movements were scherzos, and here he goes back to a minuet and a beautiful trio, where in the original orchestration it's two French horns and clarinets over strings, mostly on cello accompaniment underneath. And in the version that we will be playing, these solos are played by the first violin, our concertmaster, and the two violas, who will be playing the parts that French horn has. The third movement is the race starts. Here Beethoven is full of jokes. There are sudden silences where the audience won't know what is coming next. There are fermatas over bar lines, and towards the end, Beethoven is a bit like a spoiled child. He's throwing a temper tantrum, and there are this incredible set of loud chords that no end of them, and just to bring the piece to an incredible conclusion. So I hope that you will join us either for the live stream or for the in-person performance at Jane Mallett Theatre. Thank you.